I fled into the elevator clutching my termination papers, desperate to escape the man who'd just destroyed my life. I didn't know the silent stranger inside could destroy my world even more completely, or that he already decided I belonged to him. The 40th floor hallway of Skyrise Tower stretched before me like a glass tunnel, all sharp angles and corporate perfection. My reflection fractured across every polished surface, 20 versions of me, all falling apart. My cardboard box cut into my ribs with each ragged breath, the edges sharp enough to bruise. I focused on that ache, letting it anchor me before the panic swallowed me whole. I'd made deliveries to this building for 8 months. Always through the loading dock, always invisible, always safe. But today I'd been summoned to the executive floor for a premium client delivery. Of course. Because Derek Vane couldn't just accept his documents like a normal person, he had to corner me in his office, he had to put his hands on me, he had to make me slap him so hard his assistant heard it down the hall. Now my employee badge was deactivated, my bank account flagged, and Derek's voice still echoed behind me, "You're blacklisted, you stupid bitch. You'll never work in this city again." The elevator bank gleamed ahead like a promised exit. 47 steps. I counted them automatically, my courier training kicking in even as everything else crumbled. My sneakers squeaked against the marble, too loud, marking me as someone who didn't belong among the Armani suits and leather briefcases. 47 steps to disappear. I could manage that. Kalia. Derek's roar punched through the hallway's sterile quiet. My box nearly slipped from my arms. Every professional on the floor turned to watch my humiliation, their faces carefully blank, already deciding I was the problem. I didn't look back. Maybe he'd give up. Maybe security would stop him before he reached me. Maybe the universe owed me one single fucking miracle. "Don't you walk away from me." His footsteps pounded closer, expensive Italian leather on marble, the sound of money chasing down someone who had none. My vision tunneled. 23 steps. I broke into a run, my paper bag of personal belongings rattling, the photos of my sister sliding loose. The elevator button glowed under my thumb. I slammed it 3 times, 4, my breath coming in sobs I couldn't control. The door slid open with a whisper. I threw myself inside, spinning to jam the door close button, my whole body shaking. Through the narrowing gap, I saw Derek's flushed face, his hand reaching. A pristine black leather shoe stepped between the closing doors. They bounced open. Derek's fingers wrapped around the elevator frame, his face twisted with rage and entitlement and something worse. "We're not done." A gloved hand moved with surgical precision. It didn't shove. It didn't strike. It simply pressed against Derek's wrist at an angle that made him yelp and stagger backward, his grip releasing instantly. The same gloved hand touched a black keycard to the elevator panel. An override code beeped. The doors sealed shut with the finality of a vault. Silence crashed over me. I turned, my heart still hammering, my vision blurred with tears and adrenaline. The elevator's recessed lighting cast everything in soft gold, too beautiful for the nightmare I was living. And there, in the corner I hadn't even checked, stood Lucas Hahn. He was perfectly still. Navy suit without a single crease. Black leather gloves. His dark eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made Derek's attention seem like a child's tantrum. He didn't look surprised by my chaotic entrance. He looked like he was cataloging every detail, the mascara tracking down my cheeks, the coffee stain on my uniform polo, the way I clutched my box of terminated dreams like it could protect me from anything. "Floor?" His voice was quiet, almost gentle. It made every hair on my neck stand up. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out but a broken sound that might have been lobby or might have been a sob. Lucas Hahn reached past me, I flinched, and pressed the button himself. His glove brushed my shoulder for half a second. Even through the panic, I registered the scent of expensive cologne and something darker. Gunpowder? Leather? Danger? He won't follow, Lucas said, his eyes still on me, unblinking. I made certain. The elevator descended. I stood there shaking, a mess of snot and tears and fury, trapped in a small box with a man whose presence felt like standing too close to a fire. I should thank him. I should explain. I should do anything except stand here drowning in my own humiliation. Instead, I watched his reflection in the polished brass panel. Watched the way his expression never changed, even as his gloved hand flexed once, testing the bones he'd just threatened to break. The numbers above the door counted down, 38. 37, 36. Who is he? Lucas asked. Not are you alright or do you need help? Just that simple, dangerous question. And somehow, I knew that how I answered would change everything. My mouth opened, but before I could answer, the elevator jolted. We both looked up. The descent had stopped. Floor 39. Through the crack in the doors, I heard Derek's voice, sharp and entitled, "Override that elevator." She assaulted me. I'm calling security. Lucas moved. One moment he was standing in the corner, a statue of composure. The next, his gloved hand was on the door frame as it started to part, his body angled to block Derek's view of me entirely. I couldn't see Derek's face from my position, but I heard the change in his voice. Who the hell are? You have 3 seconds to remove your hand from this elevator. Lucas's voice dropped to a register that bypassed my ears and went straight to my hindbrain, the part that recognizes predators. 1. Do you know who I am? I'm Derek Vane, DPF. 2. Something in that single word made my breath catch. Lucas hadn't raised his voice. Hadn't moved. But the temperature in the elevator seemed to plummet. A long silence. Then Derek's voice, thin and uncertain, "This isn't over." "Yes," Lucas said quietly. "It is." I heard Derek's footsteps retreat, fast. The elevator resumed its descent, smooth and inevitable as fate. Lucas turned back to face me, and I realized I'd pressed myself into the corner, my box clutched like a shield. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Those dark eyes catalogued everything, clinical and patient as a surgeon deciding where to cut. "Your name," he said. Not a question. Kalia Brooks." My voice cracked on the second syllable. "And the man in the hallway?" "Derek Vane. He was a client. I delivered documents to his office and I couldn't finish. Couldn't say it out loud in this golden box with this dangerous stranger who'd somehow made Derek Vane, who'd destroyed my entire life 30 minutes ago, run away like a scolded child. He touched you." Still not a question. Lucas tilted his head slightly, studying me the way entomologists study pinned butterflies. "You defended yourself. You were terminated and blacklisted for the offense." I stared at him. "How did you? Your badge is deactivated. Your box contains personal effects and a severance envelope. You're still in uniform, which means the termination was immediate. You ran rather than called for help, which means you have no allies in this building." He paused, and something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. "And you slapped him hard enough that his cheek will bruise. Well done." The elevator chimed softly. Floor 12. "I'm not usually violent," I said, and immediately hated how defensive I sounded. He cornered me. He wouldn't stop. "I don't require justification." Lucas pulled a black leather wallet from his inner pocket, extracted a card, and held it out to me. "I require someone with your particular combination of desperation and fire." I looked at the card without taking it. In Boston Silver, Lucas Hahn, CEO, Hahn Global Enterprises. A phone number. Nothing else. I don't understand. You need employment. I need someone who won't be intimidated by men like Derek Vane. His eyes locked onto mine, and I felt pinned by that gaze, unable to look away. Call the number tomorrow at 9. We'll discuss terms. The elevator reached the lobby. The doors slid open onto marble and chandeliers and safety. I didn't move. Lucas stepped around me, his movements liquid and precise. He paused at the threshold, his gloved hand holding the door open. What if I don't call? I whispered. He looked back at me, and for the first time, something almost human crossed his face. Almost. Then you'll always wonder if this elevator was your last chance to stop running. The doors closed behind him, and I stood alone, clutching a business card that felt heavier than my entire box of ruined dreams. I called at 9:01 the next morning because my rent was due in 6 days and my sister's tuition payment had bounced. Because I'd spent the night refreshing job sites that all showed the same message, application declined. Because Derek Vane had kept his promise, and I was radioactive in every courier company, delivery service, and logistics firm in the city. The line rang once. A woman's voice, crisp and efficient. Mr. Hahn is expecting you. A car will arrive at your location in 12 minutes. She hung up before I could ask how she knew my address. The black Mercedes pulled up to my apartment building exactly 12 minutes later, so pristine it looked like it had never touched actual road. The driver didn't speak, didn't ask my name, just opened the door and waited. I climbed in, my best interview outfit, a thrift store blazer and Target pants, suddenly feeling like costume jewelry at a diamond auction. I expected to be driven to an office. Instead, the car circled the block once, then pulled to a smooth stop in front of a hotel I'd only ever seen in magazines. The driver opened my door onto a private entrance where Lucas Hahn stood waiting, checking his watch with the casual precision of someone whose time is measured in millions. You're punctual, he said, as if this was somehow noteworthy. You knew where I lived. I know everything relevant. He gestured toward the hotel entrance. Walk with me. Not, shall we go inside or would you like to? Just walk with me, like my consent was a foregone conclusion. We didn't go into the hotel. Instead, he led me around the side to where a black limousine waited, its engine purring. The back door opened as we approached, no driver visible, just smooth automation. Lucas waited for me to enter first. Every instinct I had screamed that getting into that car was a mistake. But my sister's face flashed in my mind, her scholarship application, her dreams that depended on me not being blacklisted and broke. I got in. The interior was all black leather and tinted windows, a mobile fortress that sealed with a soft click. Lucas sat across from me, not beside me, maintaining the distance of an interview even in this intimate space. He pulled out a slim tablet and swiped through screens I couldn't see. Your employment history is impressive for someone your age. Perfect delivery record. Multiple commendations for efficiency. No complaints until yesterday. He looked up. Derek Vane has filed assault charges. My stomach dropped. What? They won't proceed. He withdrew them an hour ago. Lucas set the tablet aside. I need someone to manage my personal schedule and logistics. You would coordinate my appointments, handle sensitive deliveries, and manage various projects across my business holdings. The position requires discretion, adaptability, and absolute loyalty. What kind of projects? Varied. Some require travel. All require that you ask no questions about the content or purpose. His eyes locked onto mine. The salary is $200,000 annually, plus housing and expenses. The number hit me like a physical blow. I'd made $32,000 last year. My throat went dry. That's... I couldn't finish. Generous, Lucas supplied. Because the work is demanding and the hours unpredictable. You would be available whenever I require you. He leaned forward slightly. Do you accept? I should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why someone would pay that much for a glorified assistant. Should have noticed the way he said whenever I require you, like I would become a possession. But my sister needed tuition. My landlord needed rent. And I needed to stop drowning. Yes, I whispered. I accept. Lucas smiled then, just a slight curve of his mouth that didn't reach his eyes. Excellent. You start now. Lucas Hahn's penthouse occupied the entire 48th floor of the apex tower, and it felt like walking into a magazine spread titled Soulless Perfection. Everything was black, white, or chrome. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city like a surveillance grid. The furniture looked expensive and uncomfortable in equal measure. Not a single personal photograph. No books. No mess. Nothing that suggested a human being actually lived here. Your workspace, Lucas said, gesturing to a glass desk positioned near the windows. A laptop, tablet, and 3 phones sat in precise alignment. Passwords are in the top drawer. The calendar is color-coded by priority. Red appointments are immovable. I approached the desk like it might bite. The top drawer opened silently on expensive hinges, revealing a leather portfolio. Inside, printed passwords, building access codes, and a list of contacts that made my breath catch. Names I'd seen in Forbes. Names I'd heard whispered in news reports about organized crime investigations. Mr. Hahn, Lucas. He was already moving toward another room, expecting me to follow. We'll be spending considerable time together. Formality is inefficient. I grabbed the portfolio and hurried after him through the penthouse. He showed me everything with the detachment of a realtor, the kitchen I would stock according to his preferences, the guest room that would be mine when I worked late, the security system I was now authorized to access. Each room was perfect, sterile, waiting to be lived in but never actually lived in. We returned to the main room just as 3 men emerged from the private elevator. They moved like Lucas did, that predatory grace that came from muscles trained for violence, not vanity. The first was massive, Korean, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. The second was lean and white, his eyes constantly scanning exits. The third was black, well-dressed, and had the look of someone who'd seen too much and stopped caring. Security? I asked weakly. Jean, Marcus, and Terrell, Lucas introduced them without answering my question. They'll be your protection when I'm unavailable. Protection from what? I didn't ask. The men nodded at me with the professional courtesy of people assessing whether I was worth the effort of keeping alive. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned the rhythm of Lucas's life, which was to say, I learned he had no life at all. He worked 18-hour days, ate meals that appeared via mysterious delivery, and slept in 4-hour increments. His calendar was a nightmare of overlapping commitments and cryptic entries like dock inspection and soul negotiation. I fixed it. I couldn't help myself. I rearranged his schedule into something humane, color-coded not by his priorities but by urgency and location. I added buffer time between meetings. I ordered actual groceries and cooked meals when I stayed late, leaving containers in his pristine fridge because watching him eat protein bars for dinner made me irrationally angry. I brought my sister's old Bluetooth speaker and played music while I worked because the silence was suffocating. I kept a coffee mug on my desk, leaving rings on the glass surface. I kicked off my heels under the desk. I existed loudly in his quiet space, and I couldn't seem to stop. And Lucas changed. The clinical observation became something sharper. I'd look up from my laptop and find him watching me from across the room, his expression unreadable but intense. When I handed him files, his fingers would linger against mine for a half-second too long. When I laughed at a text from my sister, his gaze would track to my mouth and stay there. One night, working late on a logistics spreadsheet that definitely involved money I shouldn't ask about, I felt his presence behind me. "You've reorganized my entire operational structure," he said quietly. "You were double-booking yourself and missing meals." I didn't turn around. It was inefficient. A pause. Then his hand appeared on my desk, placing down a container of the pasta I'd made 3 days ago. "Empty. Clean. Make it again," he said. Not a request. And I realized, too late, that I'd already made myself indispensable. I found the gun while looking for a stapler. Lucas kept his home office locked, but he'd given me a key 2 days prior for filing purposes. The desk was as organized as everything else in his life, every drawer labeled, every document precisely placed. The stapler should have been in the top left drawer labeled supplies. It wasn't. Instead, I found a Glock 19, matte black and very real, nestled in custom foam. My hand jerked back like I'd touched a hot stove. Corporate executives didn't keep loaded firearms in their desk drawers. I knew it was loaded because I'd grown up in a neighborhood where you learned to identify the weight of a chambered weapon. This wasn't for show. I should have closed the drawer. Should have pretended I'd never seen it. But my hands were already moving, pulling open the bottom drawer, the one labeled archive. Manila folders, each tagged with a name I didn't recognize and a photograph clipped to the front. I pulled one out at random, Kim Jae-sung, age 34, affiliated with the Seoul Sangpilpa. The dossier detailed his movements, his associates, his vulnerabilities. Another folder, Dmitry Volkov, Russian, suspected trafficking connections. Another, Chen Wei, arms dealer. These weren't business competitors. These were profiles written by someone planning to neutralize threats. The office door opened behind me. I spun, the folder still in my hands, my heart slamming against my ribs. Lucas stood in the doorway, perfectly calm, his eyes moving from my face to the open drawer to the dossier I was clutching like evidence at a crime scene. "I can explain," I said, and hated how my voice shook. "Can you?" He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with a soft click. Not threatening, just containing. "Or would you prefer I explain?" I set the folder down carefully, like it might explode. "What is this?" "Insurance." He moved to the desk, plucked the folder from my trembling hands, and returned it to its precise location. "When you operate at my level, Kalia, you make enemies. Corporate espionage is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Competitors hire dangerous people to acquire proprietary information. I hire more dangerous people to ensure they fail." It sounded reasonable. It sounded almost true. "And the gun? Would you prefer I be defenseless?" He closed the drawer, locked it, and pocketed the key. "I've received 3 credible threats in the past year. Jean, Marcus, and Terrell are former military, but they can't be everywhere simultaneously. I wanted to ask why corporate rivals required hitman quality security. Wanted to point out that those dossiers read like mob intelligence files. Wanted to demand the truth instead of this careful half-story. But then my phone buzzed. A text from my sister, all caps and exclamation points, tuition paid. Full scholarship confirmed. Who did you bribe? I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. That scholarship, the one she'd been waitlisted for, the one we'd been told was impossible, required a $40,000 endowment to activate. Lucas was watching me, his expression neutral, giving away nothing. "You didn't," I whispered. "I have connections at the university." I made a call. He straightened his cuffs, the gesture casual, as if he hadn't just purchased my silence with my sister's future. "Your sister is brilliant. She deserves opportunities. My throat closed. He'd found my pressure point and applied exactly enough force to keep me compliant. And the worst part, the absolutely damning part, was that I was grateful. The files, I managed. I won't look again. No, Lucas agreed quietly. You won't. Because now I couldn't afford to. I left the office, closed the door behind me, and chose to believe his lies because the truth would cost me everything. The dress arrived in a black box with no card, no explanation. Just midnight blue silk that cost more than my entire wardrobe combined and fit like Lucas had somehow memorized my measurements without ever touching me. The Westbridge Charity Gala, he'd said that morning, not asking if I wanted to attend. You'll accompany me. We leave at 7. Now I stood in his penthouse entryway, feeling like an imposter in couture, while Lucas adjusted his cufflinks with the same clinical precision he applied to everything. His tuxedo was perfection, sharp lines and controlled power. When his eyes finally lifted to me, something predatory flickered across his face before his mask slid back into place. You'll stay beside me, he said. You'll smile. You won't wander. The ballroom glittered with old money and new power, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across faces I'd only seen in business journals. Lucas's hand settled on my lower back, proprietary and warm even through the silk. People gravitated toward us immediately, or toward him, really. I was just the unusual accessory, the courier girl dressed up and displayed. Lucas Hahn, a silver-haired man, greeted us. Finally embracing civilian life, I see. And with such lovely company. Appearances matter, Senator. Lucas's smile was mechanical. Kalia manages my affairs beautifully. The way he said it made my role sound both professional and intimate, deliberately ambiguous. I felt the weight of dozens of eyes assessing, calculating, wondering exactly what I was to him. Then I saw Derek. He stood near the bar, his jaw still slightly swollen where I'd struck him. Our eyes met across the room, and his face twisted with recognition and rage. He started toward us, purpose in every step. Lucas felt my tension. His hand pressed firmer against my back. Stay close, he murmured. Derek cut through the crowd like a shark. Hon. I see you're collecting strays now. Does she come with a warning label about assault? The conversations around us faltered. Lucas turned to face Derek fully, and the temperature seemed to drop. Derek Vane, Lucas said pleasantly. I was hoping we'd have a chance to speak. About your violent little. About your hedge fund. Lucas's voice remained cordial, but something dangerous lurked beneath. Specifically, your illegal short positions in the pharmaceutical sector. The SEC received an anonymous tip this morning. Quite detailed. With evidence. Derek's face went white. You can't. I can. I did. Lucas tilted his head slightly. Your investors are being notified as we speak. By Monday, you'll be radioactive. No firm will touch you. No club will have you. You'll understand what it feels like to be blacklisted by someone who actually has power. I stared at Lucas, my heart pounding. This wasn't business. This was annihilation. For me. Derek's hands clenched into fists. You're destroying my life over some nobody courier? Lucas's expression didn't change, but his next words came out quiet and absolute. She is mine to protect. You made her cry. That required correction. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, heat flooded through my chest, shameful and intoxicating. He'd raised Derek's entire existence because of tears I'd shed in an elevator. Derek backed away, his face mottled with fury and fear. The crowd had gone silent, watching, understanding that they'd just witnessed an execution. Lucas's hand found mine, his gloved fingers threading through my bare ones. He turned us away from the wreckage he'd created, already moving on. "Dance with me," he said. Not a request. And God help me, I did. The gunshots sounded like firecrackers at first, sharp cracks that my brain refused to categorize as dangerous until Lucas's body slammed into mine, driving me down onto the limousine floor. Glass exploded inward, a spray of diamond fragments that caught the streetlight. His weight crushed the air from my lungs as more shots punched through metal and leather. Then silence, except for the ringing in my ears and Lucas's ragged breathing against my neck. "Stay down." His voice was steady despite the way his hands shook as they caged my head, protecting me even as warm wetness soaked through his jacket onto my bare shoulder. "You're bleeding. Stay down." The car accelerated, tires shrieking. Jin's voice barked orders from the front seat into a phone. Marcus returned fire through the shattered window, the muzzle flash illuminating Lucas's face above mine, all sharp angles and deadly focus, more alive than I'd ever seen him. We didn't go to a hospital. Of course we didn't. Jean drove us to the penthouse's private garage while Marcus made calls to people who asked no questions. By the time we reached Lucas's bathroom, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. "It's superficial." Lucas shrugged off his ruined tuxedo jacket, revealing the graze along his upper arm, a red furrow through muscle that was definitely not superficial. "The first aid kit is under the sink." I found it with trembling fingers, the white box absurdly organized even for emergencies. Lucas sat on the closed toilet seat, his shirt half unbuttoned, watching me with that unblinking intensity that made me feel like prey. "I don't know how to do this," I whispered, staring at the gauze and antiseptic. "Clean it. Apply pressure. Bandage." His jaw clenched as I pressed the antiseptic-soaked cloth to the wound. "You're doing fine." I wasn't doing fine. I was falling apart. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the bandage twice. Tears I'd been holding back since the first gunshot finally spilled over, hot and mortifying. "Hey." Lucas's uninjured hand caught my wrist, his thumb finding my pulse point. "You're safe. That's what matters. You could have died. You threw yourself on top of me." "Yes." Said like it was obvious. Like his life was less valuable than mine. "I told you. You're mine to protect." The possessiveness should have repelled me. Instead, it ignited something desperate and reckless. I leaned forward, pressing my forehead against his. "I don't want to be protected. I want." His mouth caught mine before I could finish, brutal and claiming. The kiss tasted like adrenaline and poor decisions. His good arm banded around my waist, hauling me against him hard enough to bruise. I gasped against his lips, and he swallowed the sound, his fingers tangling in my hair. "This is a mistake," he breathed against my throat, even as his teeth scraped my pulse point. "You should run. You should have run the moment you stepped into that elevator." "Then why did you give me your card?" I pulled back far enough to meet his eyes, dark and dilated and dangerous. "Why did you destroy Derek? Why did you take a bullet for me?" His jaw clenched. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, because the moment I saw you in that elevator, falling apart and fighting back anyway, I knew I couldn't let you go. The confession hung between us, terrifying and inevitable. "I'm not running," I whispered. Lucas stood, lifting me with him, his injured arm apparently forgotten. His mouth found mine again as he carried me out of the bathroom, down the hallway, to the bedroom I'd never been allowed to enter. We fell onto his bed tangled together, glass still glittering in my hair, his blood on my dress, both of us choosing this disaster because the alternative was being apart. And God help us both, it felt like the first honest thing either of us had done in weeks. I woke to Lucas tracing the bruises on my hip, fingerprints he'd left in the dark. His expression was unreadable in the gray morning light, but his touch was gentle, almost reverent. I need you to make a delivery, he said quietly. Dock 7, Pier 3. Jean will drive you. Something in his voice made my skin prickle, but I nodded. This was still my job, after all, even if everything else had changed. Except Jean didn't drive me. A different car waited downstairs, black sedan, unfamiliar driver. I should have noticed. Should have questioned. But I was still floating in the aftermath of last night, my body remembering Lucas's hands, his mouth, the way he'd whispered my name like a prayer and a curse. The docks were empty, fog rolling off the water in thick sheets. The driver opened my door, gestured toward a warehouse. I clutched the sealed envelope Lucas had given me, walking forward on autopilot. The blow came from behind, quick, professional. A cloth over my mouth, chemical sweet. I tried to fight, but my limbs went heavy, uncooperative. Strong arms caught me as I fell. I woke tied to a chair in a room that smelled like rust and seawater. My head throbbed. Blood crusted my lip where I'd bitten it during the struggle. A man sat across from me, his face familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. He had Lucas's bone structure, Lucas's dark eyes, but where Lucas was controlled, this man radiated barely contained violence. You're awake. Good. He spoke with a slight accent, his smile cold. I'm Junho Han. Lucas's cousin. And you, Kalia Brooks, are the first mistake my cousin has made in 5 years. My throat closed. I don't lie. It's insulting. Junho stood, circling me slowly. You think he's a corporate executive? You think those logistics you manage are legitimate business? He laughed, sharp and cruel. Lucas runs the Chongryongpa. The Blue Dragon Syndicate. Arms, information, protection, everything his father built before Lucas took control and went soft. Started trying to legitimize the family business. No, the files in his desk were security precautions. The gun was protection. The men who'd returned fire during the shooting were just. You're lying, I whispered, but it sounded hollow even to me. Junho crouched in front of me, his face inches from mine. Those deliveries you made? Money laundering routes. Those spreadsheets you organized? Territory maps. That scholarship for your sister? His smile widened. Paid for with drug money from the Busan operation. My sister's tuition. Bought with blood money. My stomach heaved. Lucas has been playing house with you, pretending he can be something he's not. But you've made him weak. Distracted. He's losing control of the organization, and the family wants him removed. Junho tilted his head. Unless he proves he still has the stomach for this life. So here's what's going to happen, Lucas will come for you. And when he does, I'll see if he's still the man who killed 6 Yakuza members with his bare hands, or if you've turned him into something useless. 6 Yakuza members. Bare hands. The man I'd slept with last night, whose touch had been so careful despite the violence in his past. He'll kill you, I said, my voice shaking. Perhaps. Junho stood, already losing interest. But the real question is, will you still love him when you watch him do it? When you see what he really is? The door slammed shut, leaving me in darkness with the truth I'd been too desperate to see. Lucas wasn't just dangerous. He was a monster. And I'd let him mark me, claim me, possess me completely. The gunfire started 3 hours after Junho left me in the dark. Distant at first, sharp cracks echoing through the warehouse like thunder. Then closer. Shouting in Korean. The wet sound of bodies hitting concrete. Silence punctuated by single, execution-style shots. My wrists were raw from struggling against the zip ties. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. The door to my room remained closed, but I heard footsteps approaching, measured, unhurried, inevitable. The door didn't open. It exploded inward, the lock mechanism shattered by a single kick. Lucas stood in the doorway, and he was nothing like the man I knew. Blood spattered his face, his shirt, his hands. His suit jacket was gone. His eyes were flat and cold, the clinical observation I'd mistaken for detachment revealed as something far more terrifying, the emptiness of someone who'd killed so many times it no longer registered as significant. He held a gun in his right hand, barrel still smoking. In his left, a knife dripped red onto the concrete. Our eyes met. For a moment, he didn't move, just assessed me with that predatory focus, cataloging injuries, calculating threats, processing variables. Not Lucas who'd traced my bruises this morning. Lucas Han, boss of the Chongryongpa, who'd just carved through his own family to reach me. Are you hurt? His voice was empty of emotion, a clinical question from a man who'd left his humanity outside with the bodies. I couldn't speak. Couldn't look away from the blood, so much blood, decorating him like war paint. Lucas moved into the room, each step precise and controlled. He crouched in front of me, produced a different knife from somewhere, and cut through my restraints with practiced efficiency. When I didn't move, frozen in shock and terror, he holstered his gun and cupped my face with hands still warm from killing. Kalia. My name in his mouth, somehow gentle despite everything. Can you walk? Junho, I whispered. Where? Dead. No hesitation, no remorse. They're all dead. Jean is securing the perimeter. We need to leave before the police arrive. He killed his own cousin. For me. I saw it in the blood under his fingernails, the arterial spray on his collar. He'd torn through his own family like they were nothing, and he stood there expecting me to, what? Thank him? Run screaming? Lucas seemed to read something in my expression. His hands dropped from my face. He stepped back, putting distance between us, and for the first time since the door exploded, something human flickered across his features. Pain. Resignation. I'll have Jean take you home, he said quietly. You'll find a new bank account in your name. Enough to disappear, start over somewhere I can't find you. Your sister's scholarship is secured through graduation regardless. He turned toward the door, his shoulders rigid. I'm sorry you had to see this. See me. He was letting me go. Giving me the escape I'd never taken, the chance to run from the monster he'd finally let me see. I should have taken it. Should have nodded and walked away from the blood and the violence and the man who'd just committed massacre for the crime of someone taking what belonged to him. Instead, I stood on shaking legs and reached for his blood-soaked hand. Lucas froze. Turned slowly, his dark eyes wide with something that looked like shock. Kalia. Take me home, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. To the penthouse. With you. You can't possibly, he stared at our joined hands like he couldn't comprehend the contact. I just killed 17 people. You watched me walk through that door covered in. I know what you are. My fingers tightened around his. I'm not running. The expression that crossed his face was raw and devastating, disbelief and desperate hope and something darker that made heat pool low in my stomach despite everything. You should, he whispered. I know, I agreed. But I didn't let go. I found Lucas in his office 7 days later, staring at the city he controlled through violence and money and carefully calculated fear. He hadn't touched me since the warehouse. Hadn't even looked at me directly, like I was something fragile he'd already broken and was too afraid to examine the damage. We need to talk, I said, closing the door behind me. His shoulders tensed. If you've changed your mind about leaving. I haven't. I crossed to his desk, planted my hands on the polished surface, and forced him to meet my eyes. But I'm done being your kept secret. Your protected pet. If I'm staying in this world, I'm staying in it fully. Lucas studied me with that clinical intensity, searching for weakness, for doubt. You don't understand what you're asking. Don't I? I leaned forward. You run a criminal empire. You've killed people, probably more than the 17 at the warehouse. You've laundered money, trafficked weapons, done things that would send you to prison for life. I watched his jaw clench, watched him prepare for my rejection. You've also protected people who had no one else. You ended Derek Vane because he hurt me. You gave my sister a future. You killed your own cousin to save my life. That doesn't absolve. I'm not trying to absolve you. My voice sharpened. I'm trying to understand you. All of you. Not the sanitized version you thought I could handle. I straightened. You told Junho you were legitimizing the family business. Were you lying? A pause. Then, quietly, no. I've spent 5 years moving operations toward legal enterprises. Divesting from anything involving trafficking or exploitation. It's why Junho staged the coup. He thought I'd gone soft. His eyes found mine. He was right. You made me soft. No. I rounded the desk, stood close enough to feel his breath. I made you want something more than fear and power. That's not weakness. That's evolution. Lucas's hand came up, hesitant, to cup my cheek. You're asking to stand beside a monster, Kalia. People will target you. Use you against me. You've already been kidnapped once. Then teach me to be untouchable. I turned my face into his palm. You need someone to run your legitimate operations. Someone smart enough to see the bigger picture, ruthless enough to handle the transition, and loyal enough to never betray you. I met his eyes. You need me. Not as your assistant. As your partner. Something shifted in his expression, surprise giving way to calculation, then to something almost like pride. The board meeting is in an hour, he said slowly. I was going to announce the restructuring of Han Logistics, our legitimate shipping and supply chain operation. A new CEO to handle the transition. Who were you planning to appoint? I hadn't decided. His thumb traced my cheekbone. I was distracted by a woman who refuses to run from monsters. I smiled, sharp and certain. Then decide now. The boardroom fell silent when I walked in, Lucas a half step behind me. 20 men and 3 women, all watching with barely concealed shock as this unknown courier girl took the seat at the head of the table. Lucas remained standing, his hand resting on the back of my chair, a clear message of protection and endorsement. Gentlemen. Ladies. I folded my hands on the table, channeling every ounce of confidence I didn't feel. My name is Kalia Brooks. As of today, I'm the CEO of Han Logistics. Mr. Han will brief you on the restructuring. Lucas leaned down, his mouth close to my ear, his voice carrying just enough for the room to hear. They'll test you. Show them why I chose you. I looked up at him, at the monster who'd killed for me, at the man who'd given me power instead of protection, and smiled. Let them try. Outside the windows, the city sprawled beneath us, Lucas's kingdom, now partially mine. Built on blood and fear and slowly, painfully, transforming into something that might almost be legitimate. I'd never run from that elevator. Never escaped the man who'd decided I belonged to him. Instead, I'd claimed him right back. And together, we'd build an empire that didn't require me to close my eyes to survive it.